Me and Rachel still in there.
Recording in progress.
Hey, good evening. This is a work session of the Greenbelt City Council. My name is Emmett Jordan. I serve as the mayor. Council, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Kristen Weaver, Mayor Pro Tem.
Jenny Pompey, council member.
Silky Pope, council member.
Amy Niesel, council member.
Rodney Roberts, City Council.
I think Councilmember McKinney may be online.
No, she's in Europe, so
Okay,
she
okay,
is,
yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
So
She's 6 hours ahead of us. I doubt very much that she's going to join us.
Well, I was just thinking she's so far ahead, she's probably finished with this meeting. Hey, so any information items for the end of the meeting? I think maybe we can talk about the calendar a little bit. Mr. Somrone, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Mayor. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any information items?
We could talk about at least one, the upcoming town hall meeting, if you want
Okay.
to do a brief check-in.
Yeah, very good. So, just quickly, we hold these council work sessions on Mondays and Wednesdays several times a month to exchange information with community stakeholder groups or to gather information from staff, advisory boards, or residents. No votes or formal actions are taken at work sessions. Our work sessions and meetings are open to the public except for executive sessions as authorized by state law, so that residents and others can observe council's deliberations. We do strive to provide reasonable opportunities for the public to voice opinions on matters being considered, so we'll pause periodically to take public comments during these times. If you want to make a comment or to raise a question, if you're here in the room, just raise your hand, and after being recognized, you can go over to the microphone. State your name and where you live in Greenbelt, more or less. We need this information for the minutes. And if you're on Zoom, you can use the Q&A tab to submit a question in writing, or you can raise your virtual hand. And once again, after being recognized and promoted, you'll need to state your name and where you live, more or less. And if you are watching on cable TV, on Facebook or YouTube, you can send an email to questions@greenbeltmd.gov. So with a public comment, 3 minutes, please speak on one topic related to the question under consideration, and we ask that you avoid questioning the motives of others. And in general, let's be civil in our conversation. That's what Greenbelt's all about. So tonight we're having a work session with GHI, Greenbelt Homes Incorporated, certainly one of the most highly esteemed and largest entities, homeowners association, cooperatives. It's the largest cooperative on the East Coast. Housing cooperative is definitely one of the largest, definitely the largest in Prince George's County and the largest in the state of Maryland. So we think that it's really, really important to sit down and chat from time to time. I think it's been about a year. Last time that we talked, it was virtual. And I just think it's great being able to sit in the same room and talk with y'all face to face. So Stephen Broad, you are the chairman of the board. Will you introduce the other members of your board?
I'd be happy to. We have with us Nancy Boyd, board member, Debbie McKinley, vice president, Chuck Hess, our treasurer, Philip Larkin, our board member, and James Claggett, our general manager.
Yeah, who's, let's see, who is online?
we may have is Zach Conron, is that, and
Oh, yes, I see. So we have our board member, Larry Donahue. We have our secretary, James. We have our audit committee member, Zach Conron. And we have our director member,
Fantastic. So, I don't know, why don't you, I understand that the GHI board, your meetings with your members are virtual for the most part. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
you might need to pull that a little bit. The red light should go on the microphone, so you might need to pull it a little closer.
Yes, they are.
Switch the microphones around a little bit.
We switched to virtual board meetings during the pandemic, and we have chosen to continue to have them virtually. We've found that it's led to a dramatic increase in participation in board meetings, and we've been able to meet with members who are in Europe or other situations where they wouldn't be able to come in person. But we did have our annual meeting only in person in the community center, which was a joy to be there again after all those years.
Well, for anyone who may be watching who doesn't know about GHI, can you give us the elevator speech for GHI, just in terms of the number of units, maybe a brief history, and so on and so on?
We're a community of 1,600 members. We have about 600 homes that were built in the mid-1930s and about 1,000 homes that were built in the early 1940s, together with 29 homes that were built later in the 60s and 70s. We have 600 equal members. Each of them has an equal vote independent of the kind of home that they reside in. We own 250 acres of land. We're very proud of our green space, and that's one of the things I find that when we see new member applications, they tend to talk about green space, sense of community, and walkability. Those are three terms we see over and over again.
Let's see, and you also have a community development different side of your organization, and you manage several apartment buildings in town?
We have a wholly owned subsidiary of the Greenbelt Development Corporation that owns and operates the Parkway Apartments, two of the historic apartment buildings on Parkway.
Fantastic. So you submitted a set of questions for us to consider. But before we go there, maybe would you like to maybe talk about some of the biggest issues? We have questions that we can talk about and answer directly, but just to sort of give us more of a context, can you talk a little bit about what the biggest 2 or 3 biggest issues facing GHI right now might be?
I think the biggest issue that we face is pipes. We have pipes inside our homes and pipes outside our homes. We've finished a very successful pipe replacement pilot project under the leadership of our very talented staff. And that's gone very well. And with the lessons we've learned from that, we're hoping to expand that program to perhaps as many as 100 homes in the coming year. We'll be completing that project gradually, a replacement of interior supply and waste pipes. The second major issue that we've talked about in this forum a number of times is our relationship with WSSC. We would very much like them to replace the supply and waste pipes that they installed in the mid-1930s and are well past their useful life. And we've been in negotiations with them since 2008. We're hoping to re-engage with them soon and come to a successful agreement.
Very good, very good. And for individuals that are watching or would like to come and live in GHI, how do you become a member of the cooperative? And just in terms of responsibilities, what are the responsibilities of residents, with maintenance or fees and different things?
I suppose it's not something I've done for a long time. I suppose that you would initially make contact with a realtor who would have information about our units that are for sale. And then you would complete an application process with our staff that would include attending an orientation meeting where you would learn about the rights and responsibilities of co-op membership. You'd submit an application that would include financial information and letters of reference. Those would be reviewed by our staff first and approved, and then if they're approved, they would come to the board of directors and we examine that information and we vote to admit new members. Typically, we would admit maybe 5 or 6 new members per meeting, and we meet twice a month except in the summer.
Roughly 100.
It's typically about 100 years per year, our treasurer tells me.
Very good, very good. So home values have gone up quite a bit, and also the real estate market has been hot, I suppose. What is the occupancy rate or the number of units percentage that are open And when a unit does go for sale, how long is it on the market?
I would ask our general manager if you have better information than I have.
It's pretty amazing. And the average, and I know that you have 3 or more different housing types. So what is, the asking price, typically, or how much has that increased over the past year or so?
I
Just
think
in
that
terms of-
if I'm correct, this year we had the first sales for over $400,000, and the lowest price would be 150. Would you say? So 150 would be for a 1-bedroom apartment, upper or lower level apartment, and 400,000 would be for the largest of our homes.
Yeah, and most of the maintenance is included in the cooperative fee.
Yes, our fees are about, correct me if I'm wrong, they're about a third real estate taxes, and the rest for combination of administration and maintenance. And our maintenance services are very extensive, and also insurance, which we have been paying a great deal of money for and find increasingly difficult even to obtain. But we've taken various measures to work on that problem. That's, I think, in common with many homeowning properties in the country.
Yeah, well, throughout Greenbelt, there's almost a crisis just in terms of increasing insurance cost with the condominium associations in particular. It's very, very challenging. It's causing the fees to go up 20, 30, even 40% over time, and it's a shock
Yes.
for residents that are on a fixed income.
It is, and we're very concerned about affordability. We're trying to explore a number of measures that can help us make our homes more affordable, especially for our senior retired members, to make it possible for them to remain in their homes, which in general, of course, they'd like to do. We're also thinking about first-time home buyers. There's been a program that I think has been really successful that used, I think, ARPA money. We'd like to find, if we can find some way to continue something like that, as well as to continue to assist our members who are experiencing financial hardship, which we did very successfully during the pandemic via member fundraising and charitable endeavor.
It's powerful. In regard to the first-time homeowners grant that we were able to support through ARPA funding, it was difficult to get that set up initially because the need to work with the financial institution that would be the intermediary in allocating those funds. And so do you have a sense of how many new owners took advantage of those grants? Because the funding is going to continue to be around through December, perhaps longer. Mr. Summerall, do you have any?
With the grants, we're hoping to wrap up all the expenditures by October because we need to, if we have any funds left over, we need to reallocate them. With the GHI down payment, the payments for the GHI homes, that actually was well received by the public and reallocated funds from the other pot of money for the conventional home purchase program to the GHI down payment. And if there are, soon we expect to have, let me backtrack, we expect to have a conversation with council on reallocation, as I shared previously with council, that we're waiting on one project to be funded, that is the indoor pool deck project that we expect to be funded by the Board of Public Works through the program Open Space Funding. Should that be funded, then we would have additional funds available to reallocate, and we'll bring that back to council to discuss further.
So are there any other anomalies that you're kind of bouncing back from just in terms of the COVID years, helping,
I would say during
homes.
COVID, we had challenges with staff turnover. We're delighted to have Mr. Claggett with us. We're delighted to have a really talented, stable staff, and we're looking to have that continue in the future. So we're feeling very good about our situation right now.
That's fantastic. Mr. Claggett, how many employees do you have working there for GHI?
About 43 employees.
Huh? It's very good. One other, before we get into the questions, so some of the other developments in the city of Greenbelt have challenges with rentals and whatnot, the percentage of units that are being rented. And of course, it's an election year, and when the inaugurations come around, a lot of Airbnb rentals and whatnot. I know that GHI is very strict about adhering to a rental policy. So how does that work if someone is in the military and they need to leave for a year or 2 years? What is the policy on renting units for members?
We have that policy. Some rentals can be approved by the general manager. Others have to come to the board for approval. I think right now we have 10. We have 6 approved rentals, and they would typically be members of the military or members of the State Department. I think those are mostly who they are. And they have a commitment to come back to GHI once their term is over.
Very good. We've got a hand up. Zach, are you there?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that General Manager Claggett's mic was off, but it looks like somebody's fixing that right now.
Working on that, yeah.
Yeah, the light was red, but I guess if it wasn't going through.
So at this point, let's go ahead and pivot and begin to address some of the questions that you posed. And we really appreciate in a work session actually getting questions ahead of time, because it allows staff to research and to figure out exactly what's going on. Yeah.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
I'd just like to note that our board member Sabrina Barron has joined us since
Welcome,
we
Sabrina.
introduced people.
Yeah. Nice to see you tonight. So let's go ahead and see if we can move through some of these questions. You brought up number 2, which status of negotiations with WSSC, and that's in regard to replacement of water supply pipes for GHI masonry homes. So that's an issue where Greenbelt, the city of Greenbelt's a direct party to an MOU that was put into place, I guess, in the mid-60s, 1958, which required WSSC to maintain the pipes between the street and where the meters are going into the homes. So as time has passed, this negotiation over maintaining the pipes, WSSC has sort of stonewalled. They're not willing to replace the pipes between the street to each of the meters going into the homes. So it's been at a stalemate for several years. So the city's completely, behind GHI in the negotiations. We're a party to the MOU. I guess it was about 7 or 8 years ago. I and the current city, the past city manager, was able to work with one of the past GHI presidents, and we actually sat and met with WSSC. So it's kind of up to you to try and get the discussion going again. We're glad to. We'll draft a letter and participate in the discussions. But what are you prepared to do just in the meantime if WSSC continues to stonewall and you have more and more leaks or broken pipes, which end up impacting our city streets? What can be done?
Well, I think we should clarify that WSSC is maintaining the system. The disagreement is over the replacement, the wholesale replacement. So when we have, they don't always come as quickly as we might like them to, but and can be, I think it's fair to say, frustrating for our staff and certainly frustrating for our members when that happens. But they have done wholesale replacements in some of our courts where that was needed. We're just concerned that given the age of the pipes, we may be coming to a point where there is a cascade of failures at such a rate that it will really be unsustainable for our community. that's why we'd like to move forward with the replacement, which is clearly needed.
Yeah, I agree. We agree. So legally, have you thought about filing a suit against WSSC? I guess they're a public agency. You really can't do that.
We are in communication with a lawyer who's very familiar with WSSC and how they operate, and we have been, one of the reasons we've been waiting is because we've had a new general manager that we'd like to give some time to get familiar with things, and WSSC had a new general manager. So we think we're in a better position now, and I think we're planning to re-engage pretty shortly with a negotiating team. And typically, we've been through a lot of rounds with them. We came very close to a solution, and then most of their senior people resigned kind of en masse. And so we were back to square one. So we'd like to get back to where we were and explain the situation. We had them out here one time, and I thought that was very helpful because they really saw we're so unusual compared to the typical subdivision they work in. And when they saw what we were talking about, that we were talking about replacing millions of dollars of pipes and transferring that to our responsibility, that at least a couple of the senior engineers got that, I think, in a way they hadn't before. So maybe we can get back there.
Yeah, I remember that. But on the city side, we've had turnover. We have a different city manager. We have a different director, acting director of public works. So to the extent that we can get the conversation going, the city stands behind the MOU. Yeah, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Well, I just wanted to kind of mention that the city is an equal party in the agreement, the 1958 agreement with WSSC. So I think that the city maybe should take, a little stronger role in this process because we are an equal party and we have just as much a responsibility, I think, to the people who are living in those homes who are going to, suffer the consequences of those pipes being what they are. So that's as much our responsibility as it is the GHI board's responsibility, in my opinion. So we have a responsibility there, and I think we need to partake of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And in the past, we did actually take the lead in getting that conversation going. So we continue to stand behind GHI 100%. What next question? Would you like to pose some of the questions to us?
Do you want to go to number one, the stormwater drains?
Okay. Could you frame the issue for us?
Yes, there's a stormwater system that underlies our property that, is our understanding, was transferred to the city at the sale of the federal property. And that the subsequent agreement is that the city owns the main pipes and that GHI takes responsibility for the lateral pipes. Am I correct in that? And so we've had situations of failures of that system. And I think the things that we are hoping to have are, first, some information about how the process of possibly conveying that system to the county's responsibility, where we are in that. And second, where we are in the memorandum of understanding with the city, and when we have failure situations that involve both lateral and main pipes.
Right. So here's what I've been told. The city, we've been working with an engineering firm, Charles P. Johnson and Associates, to identify the best path forward, executing easements with the county on the storm drain systems. Some of the easements were not accepted by the county due to needing easements. So most of these systems are in historic Greenbelt and within GHI. So we're trying to pilot as a test point. The city has asked this engineering firm, CPJ, to map and draft an easement agreement for the storm drain system located near 4 Woodland Way. Unfortunately, the pilot project has experienced some challenges with pipe location and mapping, significant delays due to the CPJ project engineer going out on emergency family leave. So we're working on it. This city staff has requested a meeting in the near future with Charles P. Johnson and Associates to get this project back on track, possibly this month. So once the system has been mapped and an easement agreement drafted, With GHI's permission, the agreement will be forwarded to the county for review. The county response will guide how the city proceeds with mapping additional systems and define what role the city and the county will play in addressing stormwater drain maintenance of the system. So it's complicated. The county does, for the most part, have responsibility for stormwater management. So the fact that there was a lapse in the acceptance of this portion of the stormwater main pipes in GHI is vexing. So we're hopeful that the engineering firm will be able to map things out and we can get a better sense of exactly where we're going. So I wish I had more news for you, but hopefully this month is what this says. Mr. Sumano.
Correct. We're looking to re-engage CPJ on this project. I share the sentiment of council and GHI that it's regrettable that we had this agreement and the proper paperwork wasn't filed back when it was supposed to, and they did not take possession of the lines and the easements. So much time has passed since that work was to be done. And now, in addition to our own challenges of having these easements drafted and the mapping done, the systems do not meet the design standards of the storm drainage requirements that the county has. So a lot to work through.
Yeah, and that is a challenge. On the one hand, the county does have responsibility for stormwater management, but because the pipes are smaller and don't really meet the needs of the year 2024, it's the conveyance is more complicated. So we're working on it. We're going to continue to work on it. So, please go ahead.
Yes, so is there, well, that's close. Is there a size limit to the pipes that the county will accept? In other words, is there a certain diameter below which they will not accept, or are they accepting any size as long as it's a main?
I understand that there's a minimum size standard that they will accept. Anything smaller than that size, they will not.
And what is that diameter?
I don't have that diameter in front of me, but I heard the number and I can get the specs. Now, what I will say, regardless of what size the pipes are, I think that this is where Mr. Roberts and I would agree that this is an infrastructure challenge that should have been addressed long time ago, and the city does have a role in making sure that we meet those standards before they're handed over. And I hope that the county will work with us on finding a resolution, because we can't say it's not our responsibility now, and they can't say it's not their responsibility.
Mr. Larkin.
Yeah, at our last work session, we, I think, came to some kind of consensus about the city and GHI working together. So when there were issues that involved both the main and the lateral, there would be one hole, one contractor kind of thing. I just wanted to see, maybe ask our general manager how that, and the city manager, how that cooperation is going.
I think the location that Mayor Jordan just referenced is our test case between 3 and 4 Woodland Way. And so we're trying to navigate through this process.
Tim.
And I think, Josue, you mentioned that there might be some funding available to get these things up to some of the federal funding available. Was that in relation to this, or was that in relation to the WSSC? I'm trying to remember when we were chatting about it the other day.
There's funding for both areas of work. There's storm drainage systems and replacement of lead and galvanized water lines through the infrastructure funding that's available at the federal level. States also have made their own pool of funding available. Part of it has to do with EPA needing to meet EPA water quality standards to remove galvanized lines and lead lines. I think certainly the stormwater systems, they're below the capacity needed to support the flows. So that's a pretty clear case. I think we just need to do the legwork to do the engineering and mapping of those lines and getting cost estimates for what the replacement cost would be so we can apply for funding. And just about every funding opportunity out there does require some form of match, so we have to be prepared with matching dollars.
Of course, to the extent that we can actually mitigate the stormwater runoff through intentional design and just thinking through how we can better get that rain or water to seep into the soil is another way that we need to kind of manage things. You know, the diameter may, at the current size of the diameter of the pipes, maybe that actually isn't big enough to handle the runoff 5 or 10 years from now. So I know with that county program, the Clean Water Partnership, GHI was able to benefit from a few projects, and I believe they're still around. Do you have any new stormwater management projects coming online in the next year or two?
We'll have approximately $300,000 worth of work kicking off in October.
Very good. Are you working with the county on that, or is that all internal?
It's all internal thus far.
The federal or state grant money, or just all internal?
We are looking at opportunities to try to obtain some grant money for those projects, but at this point it's internal.
That's fantastic. So keep us posted on that, and if there's some way through a letter of support or through a more active partnership on some of those projects, we may be able to collaborate and secure more funding.
So I have a question for Mr. Samaron. The funding that you're looking at, is that the TA water grant that EPA has available for stormwater infrastructure, both green and gray?
We don't have a specific application that we're looking to submit, so it's not a project that we're actively working on. I know that there is funding available, and I'm drawing from my experience in Ohio, where we tapped into federal and state dollars to replace stormwater systems and water lines.
Yeah, okay. Well, this TA water grant is a grant. As far as I understand, it does not require matching funds. It's just an outright grant.
Right.
If you Google, US EPA TA water, it's capital T, capital A, capital WATER. There's an online, I think the first step is to fill out a request form that EPA reviews and then contacts you. And I believe that grant money is also available to put together a request for proposal or a grant request itself. So they help you, they help you put the grant application together, so you're essentially not out any money putting the grant application together. So it's a two-step process. But like I said, there's an online form that you fill out. I think you're limited to like 250 words or something like that, but then they in turn will contact you and get more information and assist you in the application process. And that's one of the grants that GHI is looking into to assist us in paying for our gray infrastructure. And then, like I said, it also applies to green infrastructure projects.
250 words, that's my kind of grant. But actually, it's really hard to squeeze down a great idea into as few words as possible. But on that topic of grants and applying for grants, the city does have a person who is focused on grant management. It's the first time we've had that in place. And it's really important, especially with these larger federal grants, state grants as well, to just be on the same page. So if you are actively going after something, it's good if you just let us know about it. And that way, if we're going for the same thing, or if we know of some other information that would be helpful, we can kind of coordinate a little bit better. But it's really important because we want you to get the funding, and we don't want to be butting heads over funding sources. So I think if there are no further comments, we can kind of scoot on to number 3. And I'll take this update regarding the installation of light fixtures in City Park between 11 and 13 courts on Ridge Road. So I got to tell you that this item is not in the 25 budget. We're sort of bumping up against the wall with the budget and trying to maintain our tax rate where it is right now. So in city manager's budget proposal, the one that's approved and been adopted by council, the project is probably going to cost about $35,000. And we're talking about the pathway between Ridge and the library. So I know we've been talking about this forever, petitioning the residents to make sure that they want it or they don't want it. And you did a survey. You've probably done 2 or 3 surveys over the years. And the consensus was that you definitely want the lights. Our challenge is there's no electrical source close enough to these bollards. I assume they'd be bollards. So that's why the cost of this project would be rather high. So we're aware of it. We appreciate the need, but it's not in the budget this year. Let's see. We've got a question from someone who's here in the room. Would you like to come to the microphone?
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. I'm very, very happy that you brought that up as one of the items, because that is one of the items that I said to myself when I got off of council that I would continue to follow up on. I placed it on the work session for request for council to have. It's been sitting there for years. They don't even have a work session on it yet. I know that Public Works has some ideas, but there was just nothing. So I'm so glad you brought that forward, and I will hope that at some point there will be a work session so we can at least discuss the concept and the cost so that everyone knows where everybody stands, so that we can find perhaps a grant for it. Thank you.
Some of our members have expressed a safety concern, and that's why they'd like to have the lighting there. It's not just a sort of a convenience thing.
Understood.
Ms. Pope.
Ms. Pope, are you there?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry, I have to join from home tonight. I'm not able to be in chambers tonight. But I would second what Jay Davis just said. I think this has been on the agendas for many years now, and I do think it is a safety issue, and I would hope that we could find a solution to this soon, rather sooner than later, and with a possible grant or however. And I see that that we may be able to use some of the ARPA funds if possible. But I really would like to bring that to the forefront because we have so many people walking that path. Fall is coming, it's getting darker. And like I said, it's been on the agenda for so many times. And, I would really think that if we could find time to have a work session and look further into this and get it done. I know 35,000 may sound a lot, but in reality, it might not, be that difficult maybe to find that and get this project finally done for everyone. Thank you.
Well, let's make that a relative priority for a work session. The key to having that work session is to have staff ready to provide some alternatives for us to consider and to talk about. So let's leave it there, Mr. Summerall.
As part of the planning for reallocation of ARPA funding, should the indoor deck get approved, which we expect and hope it gets approved, we have started to scope out projects that we would bring to council for vetting and reallocation of funds. So if council wanted to add this as a list, we can get the pricing, and that would be an option that we can consider for the reallocation.
Yes, please. I would ask to be for this to be placed on our list. Thank you.
I think at least having the information we need to, and more precise pricing and that sort of thing, so that we know how much it would, with a little bit more confidence that it is actually going to be only 35, not more or less.
Right, right. And we're getting updated pricing on a lot of our projects. One that we had previously heard from council, that council had expressed an interest in vetting, was the animal shelter, replacement of the animal shelter. And preliminary pricing came back at 180,000. Now that we started actively working on a contract, we're looking at a price tag of 480,000. So, you know, we're evaluating all the costs for these projects, and so that we can be prepared with more precise numbers when council looks at the reallocation.
Very good, very good. Well, let's move on to question number 4. And Mr. Brute, would you like to frame this question for us?
We've had members concerned about cell phone service, especially not being able to call emergency numbers. I'm not sure how prevalent that issue is right at the moment, but it has been voiced over time, and we are wondering if there are things that have improved that situation, if there are things that we can do to help improve that situation.
Yeah, it's my understanding that one of the cell phone service providers in particular seems to, the coverage in Greenbelt is problematic. And, you know, if you go to their website and look at sort of their parts of Ridge and actually most of the area that is east of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway do not get good service from one of the providers whose first initial is V, not to make any hints or anything. So, Mr. Sunrun, what can you say about working with the cell phone companies? I mean, it's not really the city's role to favor one company over another. So what's the best way to move this ball forward? We've heard it over and over again. It's a safety concern. So is this the kind of thing that the users, the people who subscribe, and maybe formally through GHI and other entities, need to really ramp up the pressure on a particular company if it's not really serving the community that you're in?
I think it could be a combination of both. I know internally, just for the administrative cell phone service, the administrative team here at the municipal building, we have Verizon phones, and we get terrible service. I get terrible service in historic Greenbelt. Great service outside of Greenbelt, but I'm spending the majority of my time in Greenbelt, and that's when I need the phone. So I think part of it could be driven if we made the move to change Verizon. I think if we looked at another provider, I think that could get Verizon's attention, that they're going to be losing an institutional customer. That might be a signal for them to do a better job. It could be a signal for a prospective vendor and someone that starts with a T to reinforce or invest more resources in Greenbelt.
Yeah, and that other provider that starts with a T has pretty good coverage throughout the area. So I think we have to all kind of work onto that. But basically, the bottom line is what motivates some companies. So to actually hear from the users and say, hey, I'm going to switch. And maybe, as Mr. Samarone has suggested, perhaps with the city considering the possibility of doing that, that'll move the ball forward. There was some discussion about the water tower and the fact that that's being worked on, and the antennas that are on top are going to be on a temporary structure. So maybe, we talked about to that company about during the transition how that might be a time, but it gets a little murky. I mean, we're not to be choosing sides between providers when it comes to encouraging one to do this or that. That's not the role of the city. But I like the idea of putting the idea just in terms of our corporate account, maybe talking to some other providers. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, well, and we had a few people, I thought we had some approaches about some of the small cell, because I think I remember looking at some designs and things, and did anything ever happen with those?
Not that I'm aware of. We don't have any applications for 5G small cell installations.
Because I thought we had seen one that that did at least a preliminary proposal, but maybe they never followed through.
That's possible. Now, I know we have 5G coverage, it's just not widespread. If council is amenable to it, we could explore locations that we could offer up as potential sites for additional towers, even small cell, say the fire station, municipal building.
And the nice thing about the small cells is they're a little bit less obtrusive than the big towers that used to be all that they were doing. So.
Yeah, interesting. You bring up the topic of 5G, and I was told by someone over at the library that there was an antenna, a Verizon a V antenna installed up there, but it may have been a 5G antenna, which doesn't really improve the 3G coverage. So I'm not an engineer, telecommunication engineer. I don't know about all these things, but that's what I was told. Chuck.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what was said at the beginning. This is not a convenience issue, but this is a safety issue. If you can't dial 911 on your phone, you have a major safety problem. And I hope this is kept in mind as this is being worked on.
Certainly is. Jay Davis, you have a comment?
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. A little historical background. I know that we've had at least two opportunities or two folks that have come in and said that we'll put up a big cell tower. One was over by the Baptist church, I believe, and the public went bazonkers and that went away. We've had people talk about putting a cell tower in the middle of Buddy Attic Park or in the middle of the Forest Preserve. And the city council and the public has said no. I mean, that we just don't want that. Well, that's where probably we need cell towers, but we don't want those cell towers there. The small cell is probably the best opportunity for us to get better coverage. But with the current law, once someone applies, there is a time limit, and we would have to accept that company within a certain time. And we can't deny them, in other words. So we have to have our designs all set, we have to have our contracts all set, because there's a time that's set by state law. And that's probably what's keeping some of these companies from coming in here. They might think that we won't be able to work with that, or that they would get the best reaction, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, thank you. And I know that it's not the cable, the Wi-Fi providers that actually come in with the proposals. There's a third-party company, I think it's Crown Castle, that actually launches these requests, or applies for permits to build towers. And as the city manager was saying, we haven't really gotten any in Greenbelt. So there's something to be said for what Jay Davis just said. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I like, though, the idea of being proactive and deciding where we would like to have them, both in terms of a coverage sense and where are the worst dead spots, but also where they won't be, they'll be unobtrusive. And if we had that list ready to go, then if we get any inquiries, or then then we are prepared to respond to them. As well as, I think, as Jay mentioned, some of the style things that I think the issue with the big towers was a lot that they would be ugly to look at. So if we can try to make sure that these sort of blend in, I would like to see us be a little bit more proactive and be prepared with some places we would like to, in case we have the opportunity to talk to any, because I think Crown Castle met with us at MML a couple of years ago, and I just don't think anything came of it. Nothing came of it. So. Yeah.
So bottom line, for users, you need to look at that service map. When you're choosing a cell phone provider, look at the map, and if you're in an area and it's not being served, maybe you should choose a different provider. But I think we can be perhaps a little bit more proactive. But I think it's got to come from individuals, from entities like GHI, and from the city. And perhaps if we all work on this together, something will change. Let's see, what else? Where are we now on the museum? Do you want to ask? There's a question about the possibility of storing GHI historical records at the Greenbelt Museum. So what did you have in mind?
We have had a group of members with expertise in historical records accumulate all of the documents that we feel are most important to be preserved. In some cases, they're unique documents that aren't available anywhere else. They're currently stored in the GHI administrative offices, but we do not have the expertise in document conservation, for one. And for two, we'd like these materials to be available to researchers, which we're really not set up to do either. And we feel, I think I'm speaking for our community, to say that we feel that the more local they can be kept, the better. There was a discussion of a possibility of sending them to the National Archives or to the University of Maryland or to the State Historical Society, all of which take them quite far afield. And so we'd like to ask the city to consider, as you're considering an expansion of the museum and its capabilities, what would be the possibilities of proper archival storage of these documents and making them available for researchers via the museum program.
It's an interesting proposition. So I think it's a two-pronged response. On the one hand, it is possible. There's a cost associated with it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I've sort of, GHI put together a task force, records retention task force, and the leadership of that has kind of devolved to myself. And I am a history professor at the University of Maryland. I have a lot of experience with archives and research and so forth. Some of the storage conditions are a little bit more dire than Stefan let on. Basements, which are not friends to paper and documents and so forth. And when he talks about uniqueness, it's stuff that's the Library of Congress does not have, the National Archives does not have. So we're talking very special, very, very unique. I'll just add that I had a couple of conversations with Megan Young at the museum. And for her part, she said the museum would be delighted to have the collection from GHI. She was thinking in terms of a sort of foundational collection for a research archive that'll be available to the public once the museum expansion is complete. So just that's what I've done. That's what I know about it. And the question always becomes money, one way or the other. The virtue of the museum is that the Friends of Old Greenbelt Museum is a 501c3. That means a nonprofit with an educational component. I've looked into this myself. There's a boatload of grants, but GHI is not a 501c3. We can't apply for those kinds of grants. So we'd have to create a new organization and all kinds of things. But the museum is already set up to do that. So, they would be able to obtain grant funding for a lot of the care and a lot of the processing of what those documents would take. Thank you.
It's an interesting proposition. I guess I would have a concern. We don't really have an archivist on staff. Megan Suring-Young is museum director. She's very, very competent, but she's not an archivist, and we don't really have anyone with expertise, real expertise in historic preservation, document preservation. So, Mr. Samarone, we've got some information here about the challenges. Who put this together anyhow?
The response on this particular item came from Megan directly. So there is a cost associated with doing offsite storage, which is what we're doing now. We would not be able to take on additional materials until we complete the projects at the museum. Currently, we do have space that we use for storage in the community center, and that's at about capacity.
Got to tell you, the city, the administration office has just sent about 15, 30 boxes of materials to be digitized. and that the vendor that is doing that has expertise in indexing and tagging information. So have the documents, is the value in accessibility to the content, or is more the value having to do with the original documents themselves?
Both, I think. I mean, it's extremely rare to find something associated with what was originally a government project that there's certain documents that are missing in the official government archives. And the Library of Congress has a huge collection. The National Archives has a huge collection. And the problem is not only the I'm going to get this wrong, climatological conditions, but also attrition. You know, oh, these boxes are in the way, and they disappear. And some of this stuff, you know, we found very detailed accounts of the construction of the community. For example, we found, you know, workers' logs, who was working where, what day, and what they were doing, all of these sorts of things. There's an album of visitors who came from all over the world when the community was first established to visit and so forth. Maps and plats. I'm reliably informed that GHI has maps and plats that WSSC does not have that are very useful. So, I'm sorry?
Need to do something.
Yeah, we make those available for your use, absolutely. If I can just say something about staffing, I mean, one possibility is my department at the University of Maryland, we run a history and library science dual MA degree, and there are lots of people who are looking for internship placement in that program, and I know the museum has had interns out of that program before. There's a historic preservation program also at the university. It tends to be more architecturally oriented, I think, but there would be opportunities for internship help as well.
Yeah, I have to tell you, the College of Information Studies, the library school, is very proactive about reaching out, and we've had dialogue with them on a number of projects. I think we have a couple of interns coming in from that school in the near future. Is that correct?
We're currently working with UMD fellows to do some mapping.
Nation Studies School.
So they're doing some mapping for us. We've kept it under sort of quiet about what the work they're doing, but they're mapping fire stations and the time of travel for fire stations for us.
So thanks for bringing this to our attention. There could be a fruitful discussion. It sounds like there's great value. We have to find the financial resources to do it, but let's continue talking about it.
I have a question. With those interns, would they be doing digitizing the files and cataloging? What do you envision for those interns?
Well, both. We did a rough inventory out of the task force to find out, the kinds of things we had and where they were located and so forth. Sort of a finding guide is what we produced out of that. And digitization is kind of the ultimate in research these days. That's absolutely what needs to happen and what we would like to see happen. Of course, that's not advocating getting rid of the originals. We keep the originals somewhere in compact storage. But yeah, organization and digitization, both of those.
Okay, we thought about the digitizing ourselves, doing the digitization ourselves. It's just labor intensive, and it was easier for us to just have a contractor take over that function. We also had the pressure of needing additional workstation space in the building, and we had these boxes that, unlike your challenge, that boxes would disappear, our boxes just didn't disappear. They just kept piling up. So we ran out of space, and we needed to create more space, so we packed up boxes and sent them off-site for digitization.
There was some talk when we started this a number of years ago now about doing digitization in-house at GHI, but part of the problem with that is that a lot of this material is fragile. The paper's crumbling away, and a lot of this material is large format maps and plats, which would require a special scanner to be able to do that. So it would almost, for that kind of stuff, it would almost have to be a commercial vendor to do that kind of work. The smaller stuff, the scanners have come a long way. So, interns could do that stuff, I think, with no problem. But it would just be a matter of the hardware for the larger format stuff.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, as having spent a good bit of time in the News Review digitized archives online recently doing some council history, it is so valuable to have those digitized and searchable. So I think that's something we should definitely aim for, even if we also look to have the original physical copies maybe stored at the new museum space once that's done. But it does seem, I don't know if the company that we're doing for, because I think the city records we're doing are not quite as old as most of those and maybe not in as fragile shape. So I think, I think we can see how well it goes with some of the other city documents and see if that company or a different one has some of that expertise. But I think that's absolutely something that we should look into, and hopefully they're not in too bad a storage situation now, because we don't have anywhere to put them yet, and I don't know that we have an exact timeline for the new museum yet. But that's still, I mean, since they haven't actually started constructing anything, it's going to be a little while yet.
We've tried to mitigate that as well as we can with the resources we have. So that, they're not going to turn to dust tomorrow or anything like that. I mean, quite frankly, what worries me is attrition. Is somebody sees a box, it's a bunch of old paper. That worries me more than anything else, honestly. But yeah, digitization is the holy grail. That's the ideal situation that we would like to be in ultimately.
Well, I think your point about the museum potentially having access to some different grant resources than you do, I think that's really potentially very powerful.
Yeah, it's too bad the Prince George's County Library, the Greenbelt branch, the Tugwell room is over there. It's a shame that there's not an initiative to actually have some sort of a municipal archive where important documents from Greenbelt or other municipalities or from an entity such as GHI within Greenbelt would be able to preserve important records. It just seems like there's a real gap there, but unfortunately there's doesn't seem to be the capacity or the will to move forward with that idea. But I'm sure, in the position that you are in as a history instructor, faculty member there at UMD, that you appreciate the importance of preserving these information, but it's just hard to find out exactly where and how you're going to do it.
So we do have Megan from the museum online with her hand raised.
Hey, Megan, are you there?
Hi there. Yes, I'm here. Sorry. I just wanted to point out, we actually, the items that are in offsite storage are actually our three-dimensional objects, our artifacts. So in terms of the archives that we maintain, those are still on site in our offices in the community center. And so because not all of, there's most of the items in our collection are on display in the museum house. But the ones that are off-site, the fact that they are off-site makes room in the community center, in the museum office, that we would be able to take on storing the items in the GHI collection potentially if this arrangement goes through. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's 100% correct that there's a lot of different grant opportunities for getting items processed, meaning archivally preserved, and also put into a finding aid so that people can access it. Digitization is the next step, but I just wanted to point out that there is space right now. As was said, we don't know the exact timeline for the new space being done, but in that space there's a dedicated reading room and archive area where people will be able to come and access what we have already in our archives and potentially any other additional collections. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Megan. Please stick around because we've got the next question has to do with parking concerns related to the reconstruction of the Greenbelt Museum addition and walkway. So, Stefan or Mr. Decker, can you kind of talk about the situation? There seems to be some conflict over parking in the vicinity. And I'm not sure I understand the context.
At a recent board meeting, members from GHI attended who live directly behind the museum where the new addition will be constructed with the walkway. And they expressed a concern about parking. It's already limited. There are no personal spaces behind the museum, and there's very limited parking on Westway itself. And both of these members are limited, and they just expressed a concern about not being able to park once the addition is completed and more foot traffic comes to the museum.
Now, I'm confused. When you say behind, do you mean the service side? No, no.
The garden side.
Garden side. Okay, okay. I'm just trying to be clear about that. Council member.
So the units themselves don't have their own dedicated parking spaces? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. There are garage spaces behind, but they're not assigned to the homeowners that live there.
Okay, I was just trying to get clarity. So they, as a matter of course, park on the street because that's the only parking available to them.
Yes.
So it's a real concern about the future, not so much right now, and particularly when construction starts. So, Megan, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I know that we're still in the capital, the silent phase of a capital campaign, raising money to kind of move ahead, although we've made a great deal of progress. So what are you hearing from the board and just looking at where you are with fundraising? What projected time when a shovel might actually break the ground? How's it looking?
I can't actually give you, we really hope in the next, 18 months. Our goal is for that to take place. We have enough to start the project, and are hopeful that we will be able to raise the rest relatively quickly. One of the challenges is the permitting. So right now, we are working with GHI. We have been working with them to get approval for the project to go ahead. We have to have GHI's approval before we can go to the county to get county permits. And this issue over parking is one of the challenges. I was at the last board meeting where this was discussed, and I've also met with the Architectural Review Committee twice. And the one gentleman, when I asked about offsite parking, said he did have access to a garage, but that his pickup truck was too big to fit in it. So I'm not sure if that requires more clarification or not. But he was very concerned that he would lose that access to that space. And we want to be good neighbors. We want to be sure that we are not inconveniencing unduly people around us. So I did want to make sure that it's clear that we direct visitors to park in the library parking lot or the community center parking lot across the street and to take the pathway up to the museum. And we would continue to urge people to park there. So, but yeah, as far as when the project will be begun and or completed, I really I hesitate to put a specific timeline on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Parking over by the library and walking through the historic underpass, just to me, it creates a better sense of the history of Greenbelt. So as long as that pathway is well marked and people are directed to go that way, I think it's a good thing. So in terms of going to the GHI approval for the renovations and whatnot, when would you anticipate going before the GHI board and talking about the phasing of the project? Because once it begins, that doesn't really mean that that's going to affect the parking right away. But just what's your goal for taking the proposal to the GHI board for their consent before moving to the county?
They have all the materials, and the Architectural Review Committee was going to make the recommendation that the GHI board approve a request for an addition. However, at that board meeting, it was tabled in part because of all the discussion about parking and GHI members' concerns. I think Mr. Broad can probably answer that question as well.
Sounds like a lively meeting.
In the interest of full disclosure, I was on the FOGM board when this project was initiated. And I was a member for many years, the ARC, the Architectural Review Committee, and I am now the board liaison to that committee. So I participated in both of the discussions that the museum brought to the ARC, and the ARC was strongly in favor of this project. And this project is going to be a huge benefit to the community. One thing I've been impressed with the whole time with this is the architect who's working on this he's just wonderful. He's totally sensitive to all the nuances of this community, and that can be something to master. But he's done a terrific job with all of this. He's been flexible. He showed up to ARC meetings, was well beyond his brief to need to do that. And I would hope that we can find some kind of compromise position that will allow this project to go forward. It's there's been a lot of time, effort, and money mustered so far, and it would be more than a tragedy to see that fall by the wayside. And Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were proposing to do first was to take the siding and the shutters off and demolish a bad addition and an unsightly gazebo on the garden side. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That will be part of the renovation.
And, that part of the project, at least I would think, would be probably the least obtrusive thing that had to go on there. But if the museum could, at least be able to start with that stage of the project, I think it would be a great benefit.
That's helpful. That's very helpful. Council member, please.
Just for clarity, is the resident concerned about parking during the construction, like possibly construction workers will be parking there, or are they concerned about parking once the museum is renovated, that people who are visiting the museum would possibly be parking in the space?
I think their concern is that once the museum is operational, and particularly when they host programs, that people will occupy all the spaces on Westway and that they will find themselves without a place to park. I could tell you that we considered this issue at a board meeting, as Megan said, and it's my belief that the board in general is very positive and we want to see this happen. It's that we heard from these members who were very upset, partly because they have disabled members of their family, and so proximity to a car is very important. We wanted to hear their concerns. The reason we haven't brought back to the board yet is because we were waiting for the meeting this evening so that we could meet with you and try to find out if there's some kind of solution we can come to. The addition proposed by the city meets our requirements. They don't require an exception for us. It's that in GHI, when we're proposing an addition, we do in general require neighbor consent, and all of the affected neighbors agreed except for these two people. So the board can override that, but we don't like to if we don't have to. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. One solution that's been proposed would be to limit Westway to residential only parking, at least certain hours of days or times. I think that might mollify these people's concerns, and so that people would not only be encouraged to park in the library lot, but they'd actually have to.
So thank you for bringing this topic to council so that we know about it and can think about what some alternatives might be. I can't really think of any other place in the city where we have that residents-only parking, although there are a few areas, I guess, where GHI has assigned spaces for members. But in this case, on Westway, it's a city street, so there's not really a place for that. But yeah, I think we can put our mind to coming up with a solution. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
And that's what I was going to ask, because in my neighborhood in Greenbelt Station, there are the HOA managed streets. You have to have an HOA parking permit. The city streets, no parking permit is required. So that's what I was going to ask. But I guess these are also in GHI. Are all the streets city streets? And then So it's a slightly different situation, because well, I would say there's a clear distinction in Greenbelt Station, but I'm not sure everybody knows what the distinction is. There is actually there are certain streets that are one thing and the other. I'm not sure. New folks don't always know which one is which, but that might not be work, but might be something we have to explore, even if it's the only place we do it in GHI is in that stretch because of the circumstances.
Well, we did explain to the members that this is city property, that we don't control it. We can't mark off a space for them as GHI, but we promised them that we would come to the council and talk with you about it.
Appreciate that. And as we get a little bit further into the process and these timelines become a little more clear, I think solutions will begin to emerge. Partially, the angst may be simply just hearing about the project and not knowing when it's going to start and when it's going to be finished.
But I think I can say for our part, we're anxious also to move ahead with approving the museum's plans. That's the only hitch that I know of.
Councilmember.
Right, that was going to be my question here, because it sounds like this is what's holding everything up, is this parking space. Like this could have been approved at your last meeting had there not been an issue with the parking space. So I just don't want us as council to wait too long to figure out how to deal with this because, GHI would like to move forward. I know the city and the museum would like to move forward. So thank you for bringing that to us, and we'll try and put that at the top of one of our agendas. I do think there are things we can do. I don't know if we could maybe put signage up that encourages people to park in the museum over near those spots. I don't really know what we've done in the past and what precedent is, but it is kind of a sticky situation because it is street parking. So.
Are there signs at Spring Hill Lake Rec Center that say no metro parking? I think
So,
or recreation facility parking only or something like that.
We have a couple parking restrictions. One's the EV, one's the staff parking, and I think we have a restriction for overnight apartment parking.
that's a city parking lot, more or less.
Right, and that's a city.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, and I thought I remembered that being listed, but maybe it's somewhere else, but the idea of places that say, no metro parking here, even though it's not, just to tell people, putting up signage that says, no museum parking here, park in the library parking lot, maybe is at least one aspect of something to consider.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. That seems like a simple solution. Obviously, maybe not everyone would listen to it, but
Can't always prevent people from parking where they're not supposed to park,
and it is,
regardless
again,
of
it's
the
a city street,
regulations,
so, yeah.
right? I know, it's very shocking.
Ms. Niesel, or council member. No. Okay. I'm sorry. Megan, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, how are we coming with that fundraising? There may be somebody in the room right now, or maybe someone is tuned in on YouTube, a benefactor, a philanthropist who we don't know about, a mystery individual. How much more do we need to raise in order to just dive into this full-fledged and cut the ribbon and all that stuff? How much do we need?
Project is estimated at $550,000, and the amount that we've raised so far is about $330,000, primarily through grants, the state municipal bond, and some private donations. So we're really going to focus on, again, looking at grants that are available, as well as moving to the public phase of the campaign and looking for private donors.
Yeah, that's great.
And donations from the community.
More than halfway there, well over halfway. So that's definitely coming along. Thank you, Megan Searing-Young. Thank you very much. Hey, in that last conversation, we talked a little bit about, you mentioned the ARC, the Architectural Review Committee. And I know that's a very important committee that discusses additions and various topics. So I was just wondering, there's been some talk about affordability of homes. So I know that in many places over in Montgomery County, they've approved accessory dwellings, which is like a mother-daughter home, like an addition to create more space. Has that been a topic of discussion?
Odd. those are often called. I'm sorry, Stefan. To my knowledge, that has not, and I think that primarily has to do with the GHI regulations on the percentage of the property that an addition or an auxiliary structure can cover. So I mean, I think there'd probably be very few places in GHI that you could do that would have the yard space to do that.
I think it's a Prince George's County code. An addition cannot be more than 60% of what the original dwelling size is. I will say the Architectural Review Committee has done a lot of work on redesigning within the same footprint so that we call it a Forever Homes program. So there are different projects that can be undertaken, and there are design models that we have available for residents so that they could age in place.
It's interesting. I'd like to find out more about that. Forever homes. Also, along those lines, sometimes in walking through GHI and the inner pathways, it seems like the hedges are kind of high in some areas. In other places, they're very low, and there are fences in some places. So how do you navigate requests to that when someone moves into when someone buys into the cooperative and they move into a home, and there's a fence for a dog or a cat or a service rabbit or whatever. So what do you do with that fence? Is that fence there? Is it a forever fence?
I think we still have the program that at the new member's request, the fence will be removed at our expense. But otherwise, the fence remains.
I just asked that because walking around, sometimes I think about what Greenbelt looked like in the early days with Rex Tugwell and the sight lines and whatnot. And there's so many fences and so many hedges. I wonder how that fits in with the original vision of how GHI was subdivided.
Some of us would be happy to return to those days, but I would say there's not a consensus of opinion in our community.
That's a kind way of saying that. And with the hedges, is there some limit? How tall can a hedge be?
Yes, generally the hedges are not to be higher than 4 feet. We do have what we call a community beautification program where we actually inspect the yards and we issue citations and we encourage the members to comply with the original vision of GHI.
And if I'm not mistaken, is there an annual contest or something for the best landscaping or the best looking? Because there's some beautiful, beautiful homes.
Okay, is that working? Is that working? ARC has had such contests in the past. We also had contests for kitchen redesigns, and there was a discussion about having a contest for the program that James mentioned, the Forever Homes project. And we've had an architect draw up possible plans. We've had members who have made those kinds of changes submit photographs and things that we can share with other people in the community. But we haven't done a contest in several years. We've been working on the Forever Homes we started working on that before the pandemic. So we've been working on that program for a little while.
That's fantastic. Well, I know Prince George's County has a beautification contest every year. And I always wonder why. It seems like Greenbelt should have 2 or 3 winning entries because Greenbelt is the most beautiful community in all of Prince George's County. So I have to make sure that we get some of those GHI entries into that contest. Well, let's see, what else do we have here? Number 7, WMATA proposed 2025 Better Bus Plan. So have you had some discussions and submitted testimony, input into this Better Bus Plan? Because it's still a plan, and I believe they're still accepting some comment.
We just wanted to remind you of our concerns, the 2 concerns, the loss of the G12 and G14 routes and the plan to reschedule a great deal of bus traffic onto Westway, which we've just been talking about, which we think is a very inappropriate place to have a lot of bus traffic for quite a number of reasons we mentioned in the letter. So we're hoping that if there are further rounds of comment, if the WMATA comes back to the city, that you'll support our position. Because we have some members who are very concerned about what this would mean.
Yeah, I've heard from some of the members directly. So it's a real concern. And Westway in general, Westway, I guess it's west of Ridge Road, is just so narrow with cars parked on both sides. It's amazing that the buses go up and down. But on the other hand, making that connection to the residents of University Square and Charleston, other developments there, it's an important connection. There's a lot of people who live there. So.
We're not concerned about Westway by the synagogue. We're concerned about between Ridge and Crescent Road, among other reasons, because it has no sidewalks and because it has that very heavily traveled crosswalk at the base of the hill. If you're a driver from above or from below, it's very difficult to see people in that crosswalk because of the way the hill operates. It's a very steep hill. So we just are really concerned about buses there every 15 minutes all day long and what's going to happen safety-wise.
Your concerns are noted, and as there is additional opportunity to provide feedback, we will certainly bring that up. I'm just very concerned about the plan, what it bodes for the future. Because some integral part of the plan seems to be overlap between the county bus service and WMATA. And so they've changed the names of the routes, and it's not entirely clear who would be running the routes. So I'm kind of concerned about just having some routes, the 12 and the 14, where there's overlap with the 11 or 15 county bus. If one of those entities is no longer providing service, it represents a pretty substantial cut. Chuck.
I think another concern goes back to what we were just talking about. I think there is concern that they will make a bus stop by the museum and take away parking spaces, which, as we just discussed, are already at a premium.
Yeah, so I was looking over some of the information that came from the advisory planning board, and they provided a great deal of feedback to WMATA. So I believe you've mentioned some locations on stops 12 Court Ridge, Westway and Ridge, Southway and Crescent. So it's a work in progress. WMATA is very, very short on funding right now, as we all know. So I do plan to continue for the city to continue to weigh in on exactly how this rolls out. But personally, I'm very worried that it's just going to amount to a pretty large cut in service. And as we look towards the future with federal installations coming to Greenbelt, maybe 8 or 9 years down the road, it just seems like a bad time to be cutting service drastically. Although I was reading something today, and they were talking about WMATA and what they're projecting and how they're actually not expecting ridership on public transportation to increase or to go back to the levels where it was before COVID. Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I kind of think we're at a tipping point with traffic where it's just so unbearable, so bad that eventually people will start to use public transportation a little bit more. But to the extent that the federal workers are no longer required to come in more than 3 or 4 times a month, that really changes commuting patterns. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think, and I was trying to find the documents. I think that the only stop they proposed adding, at least in the current plan, was over by the library. So that's sort of by the museum, but not directly in front of the museum. I'm not finding the documentation very quickly on my computer, but as I recall from that presentation from the analysis by our planning department, that there were not very many there were not currently plans for adding bus stops except for that one near the library, which I mean, it seems like if you're going to add a bus stop, because the closest one right now is a little ways down. So I don't know that they'd add another one near the museum, half a block away from the one that is currently planned to be near the library.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And the rationale for that may be to make it easier for library patrons to get there, but also for people that are going back to the youth center or the community center. It's a little bit closer. But I do agree that limiting traffic on Westway, given the fact that there's no sidewalk there, is a valid position. So let's work together.
And also the area by the library is very heavily parked in because it's the only place those apartments have to park. They don't have any lot or anything behind them. So to take away 5-6 spaces, I think would be a pretty big impact on them.
Hey, if I could ask, how are things going with the apartment buildings that are operated by your subsidiary? Are rents stable or are rents? I mean, there was a whole issue with rent stabilization. So is that something that is going to impact the revenue aspects? And do you have any major renovation or upgrade projects planned for the next year or two?
We have two major projects taking place at the apartment building. We are in the process of installing new boiler systems. So that should be completed in the next week or so. The apartments are profitable. The rent stabilization bills passed by the county has not negatively impacted GHI or its subsidiary.
Rents going up there or leases and whatnot?
They are. So last year they went up about 3%, I'm sorry.
So the utilities and whatnot, the heat is sub-metered by each unit, or?
No, that's what we pay. It's part of the rent, but the utilities have remained pretty. There was some inconsistency with water bills between the two buildings, but that seems to have stabilized. I think we found the reasoning behind that, but the electricity and the water and gas have now stabilized there.
Interesting. The only other discussion point here has to do with the Prince George's County Fire Department summer staffing plan and the Greenbelt Fire Station. So we've got a town hall meeting scheduled for the firehouse on September the 12th, coming up very, very soon. The time of that is at 6:30. And we've invited the fire chief, Chief Green, from Prince George's County to be there. Representatives will be there from our volunteer firefighter company. And also, we've been working in lockstep with Berwyn Heights on this temporary summer staffing plan. And as you know, we did initiate a legal action actually against the county in conjunction with Berwyn Heights and College Park to get access to information, the rationale for the shift in personnel. And it's just vexing, the number of firefighters, career firefighters, and the coverage that we have in Greenbelt right now. We've been told that the coverage is adequate both for fire and for EMS service. And we just want to see the numbers because, the health and safety of our residents is of paramount importance to us. We're in such a congested area, so what happens in Greenbelt, does directly affect what happens in Berwyn Heights and College Park as well. So certainly, if you look at Prince George's County, there's been a lot of new development in parts of the county, South County, out on 301 up in Laurel, and lots of new construction without really new public facilities. So lots of new townhouses, not new schools, police stations, or firefighters. Recruitment's been a big issue. We just want to work hand in hand with the Prince George's County, with the career firefighters and volunteer fighters. So we're doing everything that we possibly can, everything, to make sure that we have access to all the information related to these decisions and to work to come up with a solution that protects our residents. Council, would you like to comment on that?
I mean, I think you hit it. You know, we're doing everything we can, but we don't have a lot of control, obviously, over the county and the county budgets. We've had several meetings with them. We've asked many times for more raw data about what calls are coming in and which stations are actually servicing our calls. And because they sort of send us averages, which isn't really the same. So we're hoping that eventually they'll send us that raw data. But we're continuing to try, we're continuing to pursue legal actions.
Yes.
But we are also at the same time trying to work with them, because to us, you know, we're supposed to be partners with our county, and they're supposed to be our partners in this. So we are trying to encourage them in that way. But so we are meeting, we are working, and I do hope that some of you will come to the town hall on the 12th, and hopefully someone from PGFD will come and be accountable and answer some questions for you guys. That's what our hope is.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think there are ways we can come up with solutions together with the county, and it's unfortunate that they didn't engage us with a lot of notice before they made these changes. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things, is that we can't, you know, we didn't have any preparation time. We had, I think, 24 days. But so yeah, it was not a lot of time. One thing I just want to say, I believe is the ambulance staffage, is it from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.? Or 11 to 11.
We were promised a peak ambulance from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
So I think your letter commented that it was from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., but it's actually even a little bit better than that. It's actually 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. that we've been promised. Now, I think the way they respond to calls, it's GPS based, not station based. So if the ambulance is, you know, out or even in transit to the Greenbelt station and a call comes in that they're the closest to, then they respond to that. So, you know, I think it's not always there, so you won't always see it parked there. It's probably out on calls quite a bit, but that, not enough, but that was at least something, and I hope we can continue to either collaborate and come up with solutions, or if need be, we'll continue the legal options. You know, we're pursuing different possibilities.
We're continuing the legal options, because we just need to the communication needs to be a lot clearer. And, you know, if a major decision like this comes down, you know, less than 30 days notice is not adequate. It's not good enough at all. So please encourage your members to come to this town hall.
Thank you for
September
letting
12th.
us know about that. I'm sure that every community that meets with you has raised this as an issue, and we know you're doing all we can. If there are things that GHI can do to help you, we'd be happy to try.
Well, I think showing up and being there to show how concerned people are about these changes, I think that is very helpful.
Well, let's see. We've come to the end of the structured questions. Are there some other issues, things you want to bring up with the city? You know?
I know of, we had a board discussion to come up with this list of questions. James, are you aware of any other?
I'm not.
Chuck?
I want to thank the city for finally getting a sign replaced out on Southway.
Huh?
It
Roosevelt
was-
Center sign?
No, the
No,
Welcome to Greenbelt sign.
Welcome to Greenbelt.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Historic Greenbelt.
it looked like it needed to be worked on.
If you looked at that closely, the map that was on there was a map from 1970 on the old sign, which is a beautiful historic relic.
I like the new sign much better.
I'd also just like to thank the GHI board for providing us with these questions. It really helps these meetings go much more smoothly when we know what you need from us. So I really appreciate your organization and your attention to detail and all the thoughtfulness you guys put into that. So thanks so much.
Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Now we have any questions online, comments online?
None online.
Okay, we've got one in the room. Please, I can't see you back there. Oh, Mr. Orleans.
Good evening, Bill Orleans. I was very pleased last year when I heard that GHI's board had created a records retention task force. I did not know until tonight that among the materials discovered in GHI's records are materials referencing individual workers who did the work in constructing the homes back then. I know in conversations with others, it's been thought that there was no information available about that. So that's very valuable information. I agree that those records should be kept close to home. It would be ideal if the museum had space and equipment to house appropriately all those records, maybe some of the city's records, and the collection in the Tugwell room. I would hope that'd be possible. I don't know that it is, but somewhat close to home is Hornbake, and they have a number of special collections. And a year ago, most recently, when there was concern about the collection of the Tugwell room, there was a conversation with the special collections director at Hornbake, and she was thrilled that the contents of the Hornbake might eventually go there if it were necessary to do so. Wherever it goes, I agree that it should be kept close to home. I frankly continue to disagree that any GHI housing is not utilized as GHI housing, and that the museum not only has the one house, but now has two houses. I think there could be space found, maybe I'm alone in thinking this, but space found in the community center to replicate a traditional 30s era GHI home, and also space found in the community center for an archive, a collection room, including the Tugwell collection. But I came tonight specifically to ask another question. 3 years ago, residents, including GHI residents, somewhat overwhelmingly passed the question on reparations commission. And since then, since that vote, I've been in part of a number of conversations with GHI members of good standing. Of course, I'm not, but about whether the GHI board would want to initiate among GHI members a discussion of any potential role for GHI in considering how the members, could repair questions from the 30s when, of course, blacks could build the houses, but they couldn't live in the houses, and indigenous probably could help build the houses, but I think likely they were not permitted to do so. In any event, my question is for the board. Has the board initiated any discussion among itself and the members as to whether or not GHI should play a role in considering reparations? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Would you care to comment?
No, that's a city project. We haven't initiated any of our own projects.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
No, actually, you may not. So has there been any contact between the Reparations Commission and GHI?
Sorry, who's speaking?
I'm speaking. So just out of curiosity, have you had any contact with the Greenbelt Reparations Commission today?
Had an email from them today. That's been the first contact.
Very good, very good. Okay. Hey, I just want to thank you so much for all you do for Greenbelt. We wouldn't have a Greenbelt without GHI. So the dedication of each of you serving as a board member, the work Mr. Claggett does with the employees, and how we all kind of work together on Roosevelt Center and so many amenities in the city of Greenbelt. It's just very, very important. So it's just great to be able to talk with you live, face to face, and maybe at the next meeting we can come back over to the GHI offices. I fondly remember the lavish buffets that you had for council in the past.
You're welcome to our Naughty Pine paneled boardroom anytime. It's a piece of history itself.
Yeah.
We're grateful to you, members of the City Council, Mr. Salmero, and other city staff for meeting with us this evening, and I want to express my appreciation to our board members, to our staff members who've joined us here and online. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Council, I think we may have one or two information items to share.
Well, we already kind of covered the town hall, unless Mr. Summerall.
Well, Mr. Summerall.
I wanted to walk council through what the outline for the presentation is. Thank you. So we can discuss that briefly, so that you understand what we're going to be working through over the next week in preparation of the meeting. So the town hall is going to be structured. It's a two-part meeting. There's going to be an information session where we will present all the information that we have on the matter. That includes a timeline of when notices were issued, when career personnel were removed. We'll talk about the data that we have, the data that we have not received, the list of reports that have been issued to us, such as the Fitch report that was created in 2022, the strategic management of the stations PowerPoint, a report or studies of time of travel from the fire stations, potential a couple scenarios that the fire department did on response times, looking at a 4-minute response, 6-minute, 8 minutes. So we'll walk the public through all those documents that are available. We have not determined whether we're going to take a position, or at least vocalize opinions that we've made. I've made my opinions about the reports and where I think the county is headed. I don't know that I'm not going to make those opinions public now, but I think at the town hall we may want to take positions on what we think this all means for us, because I think that is going to inform our strategy moving forward. Obviously, we'll continue the legal action until council deems it's not necessary, or we've won, or we've had something that a compromise that council would agree to. And then there's the ongoing collaboration we have with our community partners and with the county directly. So that's the informational session. I think the plan is to get through that in 30 minutes, then transition to a panel discussion format where we would have city council, our community partners, Berwyn Heights, College Park will be given an opportunity. Then entity representatives for the county fire department. We have invited the chief, and we hope that she can make it. But we're prepared and hope that some representative from the county comes, and they would have a seat at the table. And then our volunteer firefighters representatives, so Chief Ray. And the panel discussion is meant for the entities to provide their opinions, what they're working on, and answer questions for the public. For the Q&A from the public, we will have index cards where we will collect questions, and we will also set up microphones for the general public to walk up and ask a question. So
I think that's an excellent outline for how a program can move forward. We have a little bit of time, so if you can kind of jot down these ideas and share them with council, and perhaps over the weekend by Monday, we can kind of finalize the agenda and the format. But it sounds like you've actually synthesized a lot of the comments that you've heard from council and from the public into a format that I think will work. Mayor Pro Tem?
Are we going to be able to broadcast it? I'm not expecting to be able to do full hybrid participation, but are we going to be able to at least broadcast it, or failing that, record it and be able to load it up on our YouTube channel later?
At minimum, we'll be able to record it and upload it to YouTube channel.
Further, we should ask Gate, because I believe Gate, if they have someone available, would probably want to tape the program as well. So we should definitely invite Gate to record.
Okay, let me talk through that. We have our team that we have our own resources, so I don't want to duplicate resources where we can avoid it. So let me talk through the team and with Kate.
Contract where there's things that we can kind of do together. So whatever you're able to come up with is good. Yeah. Yes. Councilor.
Who's going to be facilitating the discussion? Will that be you, Mr. Summeron?
The mayor and myself. So we looked at a facilitated service, having facilitation. With the current format that we're proposing, we think we can manage with the mayor. Well, I welcome feedback too if there's any particular items you're concerned about, or if you think there's a component of the conversation that would benefit from a facilitated process.
No, but I think it's a good idea that you're one of the facilitators, because I think that you have a lot of knowledge and that's definitely needed, because I think there's quite a few questions coming at us.
Okay. Let's see.
Refreshments will offer light refreshments. The auxiliary will be providing the refreshments, and they'll manage those stations.
Okay.
We don't want hangry people.
Do we have to? Are we? Is the fire department taking care of that, or do we have to participate in providing some of the refreshments, like, you know?
I think the auxiliary is sort of offered to take that and run with it. If they need some additional support or assistance, we can probably help out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they need some financial support with that, or if that's, you know,
if
they decided to offer that.
The city will provide a budget for the auxiliary. I discussed with Kathy Reynolds a budget of $800 for refreshments.
Oh, nice. Okay, thank you.
And should there be a need for more, or there's any concerns, I left the door open for further discussion.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thank you.
Should cover it, I would think. Yeah. Well, I have an information or a question. International Peace Day is coming up with the Rotary Club, and there's a wonderful program planned. And I was asking Mr. Summeron if it'd be feasible to do some sort of a tree planting in memory of Mr. Capistan on that occasion. So is it going to be possible?
I'm checking with the team. There are some things I need from council. There memorial trees. There's an application process for it. Is council going to be the sponsor? There's also a cost associated. Obviously, if council is the sponsor, we can cover the funding for that. There's a plaque also as part of the memorial trees. We will need direction of what you want on that plaque. So I'll send you the application, and you'll give us some guidance on how to move forward with that?
I'd be glad to do that. I think that we could do this in partnership with the Rotary, and I believe they were very open to doing that. Also, I mean, there are other partners, maybe Quantum or Beltway Plaza would want to do something simple but meaningful in his memory. So.
In part of the application, there's a list of recommended trees, so we leave it up to the applicant to make a selection on the tree. Each of those trees has specific guidelines of when to plant the tree. So depending on the selection, that may not be possible for the 20th. So I'll send that to you after this meeting so we can get started on it.
Very good. And I'm sure that Mr. Towson could probably make a recommendation, but I think it would just be an important gesture. So I would want to see if there's a good location and a significant tree.
Okay.
Another thing that I just wanted to bring up, this is important, I just want to compliment you and staff, all of staff, on the wonderful job that was done on the Greenbelt Labor Day Festival. Of course, to the festival committee and all the volunteers, it's just phenomenal the amount of work that goes into making that happen. But, the Recreation Department, Public Works, the Police Department, really as a whole, all hands on deck endeavor for the city of Greenbelt. And for you, this is the first time you attended last year.
I did, yeah.
This time you were in that important seat of making things happen, and it just seemed to go almost flawlessly.
It was an honor, and the team did a wonderful job. It was all hands on deck. Every department was involved, and I'm just overwhelmed joy of how much commitment and dedication our team put into the preparations and making sure the event went off smoothly. On our end, we don't control everything, but the things that we did control and we had a hand in, we did as best as we could. And I
The cleanup is like, always blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's like it never happens.
It's like it never happened.
Oh, yes, the cleanup just happened immediately after the closing of the event, and
Very impressive.
And early the following morning. Right.
We had excellent coverage on NBC too. They had all the news before the day on Thursday and Friday, and then the parade was covered, so that's probably the best coverage we've had in years.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay.
So, Mr. Hartman, please, but please share council's deep appreciation for all the work with all the staff. It's pretty amazing how the city.
There's only one thing we weren't able to do as best as we wanted, and that falls on me. And that was the pie eating contest. I stood no chance in that endeavor.
You just have to kind of become accustomed to certain things if you're here in Greenbelt. So the pie, and I admit, I forgot to bring the first place blue ribbon in with me. I meant to bring it with me today and sort of drape it over the microphone stand.
You should
try
start
it.
training for next year right now, like really get prepared.
I was wondering, it's very nice that such accolades were given at this meeting for the staff, and I'm wondering what ways you will convey that to the staff and what kinds of an appreciation will be given. It's nice to do it here, but it would be really nice to actually do something for the staff in some way that really shows that everyone went way beyond the call of duty and something that's tangible or something more than just at a meeting saying that they did a good job. I'd like to see them thanked in a significant way, because this is a very large event and it is something that's that we're very proud of. So it'd be nice to actually have something there, whatever you think is appropriate, but more than just saying at a meeting or whatever, thank you. I think that they deserve more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I'll think through some ideas of how we can recognize our staff.
Good, very good. Hey, if there are no additional comments or discussion, why don't we go ahead and wrap things up? Thank you very much, Council. Thank you, Mr.